If you stand up, we can see you, because otherwise we do not see you.
I hope I'm not in front of the camera.
Yes, thank you.
I had a question before, and I'm actually going to go back a bit on everything you've just been talking about. So I hear a lot about we need to acquire data again. We've also heard that this morning. We need to reuse that for research. We need to do a lot of research on it. So I've also been very active in the rare disease research, in where you indeed need all this data, because this data is everywhere, because there are not many people around. But these people also need that data again to go to the clinic. So basically what I'm also advocating for, and I'd like to hear your opinion about it, is giving back the data to the people so they can go around. We have a freedom of movement in the EU, so why not the freedom of movement of data, so they can take it with them. You can also using data visiting to train your AI models, which has been validated a couple of times. So what's your position on that?
Anyone?
I never thought about that, but that's a very good idea, actually.
Yeah, I mean, we have what you say, we call this sort of flexible broad consent. So actually that is not a broad consent for your life, but actually, let's say for every study, you just get an email and say, do you consent? And in addition, you get your data back. You can use it, for clinical use in addition.
Yeah, indeed, but that's called dynamic consent, right? That's not called...
Dynamic, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, then we're on the same page, yeah, indeed. So using dynamic consent, going back to the person, requesting, can I maybe reuse your data again for this purpose? So that also this person can at some point, because the issue with broad consent is, I can never go back. So if you do not agree with what I'm researching, I will never know. And you will never be able to say no to this research question. So indeed, dynamic consent is, I think, one of the basic principles that also is implied by GDPR, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. We need a microphone here for Delphine.
Vanessa, I will just explain a bit better the real problem. A few years ago, something like 10 years ago, before we had the word AI, people said, okay, if you take billions of interactions by email, you will determine who will have cancer in the next 5 years. Just by reading what this person is putting in his email. So the real problem is this. It's the fact that we are not dealing with information which belongs to patients. The problem is that now it's information wherever you are and wherever it's produced. And that's a real problem, because for this we don't have consent. So the only problem is to have beneficial use of what's happening. And so it's a real philosophical problem. It's not a practical. I've been for 30 years on an ethics committee. So I've seen this evolution of what we call a consent. I fully agree with you about the way we need these dynamic aspects. And actually, we implemented that in my institution. But the real problem is not there. So certainly, if you have emails from people, you will determine quite easily who is depressed, who is perhaps schizophrenic, and who is developing Alzheimer, or who will have Alzheimer in about 4 or 5 years. That's the real problem. Do we want this? Yes. If the intention is to improve health, if the intention is to improve the way insurances companies are dealing with citizens, then we will not approve that. And just to give you an example of where the real problem is, the intention.